Hello and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast, ostensibly. This is episode 363. We were recording on the 24th of March 2021. We're still in the Doom times, but hopefully not for long. I'm joined today by Marsh Davis. How you doing, Marsh?
Hello.
Hooray! And the main news this week is, Marsh, you and Jim have been up to something. Jim Rossignol, that is.
We have indeed, yeah. Jim Rossignol, former PC gamer writer, RPS founder, and game dev miscreant responsible for Sir You're Being Hunted, amongst other things, and The Signal from Tolva. We've, for about the last year, he has been saving my sanity by giving me a project to get my teeth into, which is a role-playing setting. And we just released our first... in a series of 3 sort of short, condensed, single-session role-playing, pen and paper role-playing adventures that you can play in a single evening with 3 or 4 others. It's called Night of the Hogman, and in it you and other players must flee from a horde of ravening pig monsters across a cursed corner of 18th century England. And you can play as a gouty industrialist, or an unctuous parson, or a slightly anachronistic Byronic poet, if you wish, amongst others. And you can download it right now at teethrpg.itch.io. It's pay what you want, so I mean it's absolutely fine if you don't want to pay anything at all. And we're going to release 3 of these one-shots, as they're called, altogether, leading up to the launch of the full role-playing setting, which is called Teeth, which will probably kickstart as a fancy book with maps and other doodads. The capsule pitch for which is Jane Austen's Stalker, or
that's good.
or maybe slightly more niche, occult Chernobyl, but in Royston Vasey in 1780. Which may mean nothing to you. Another friend of ours described it as Blackadder meets The Witcher, which is frustratingly kind of both incredibly accurate and also crass. But it's
utterly reductive.
Yeah. It's a grotesque sort of horror setting with some comic aspects to it, and it's occasionally historically accurate as well. And there's lots of wigs and meat pies of worrying provenance. And yeah, like I said, we've been working on it for about a year, and it's been the thing that's kept me passingly sane during lockdown. And you can find out more about it at the itch page, which was teethrpg.itch.io, or you can sign up to our new newsletter at teethrpg.substack.com. Yeah, and if you do play it, I'd love to know how it went for you. It's our first go, so it's, I suspect there's lots of ways for us to improve. But even if it's not very good, I think people will agree that it's very, very silly. And honestly, I'm perfectly happy with that. I will take that as praise.
It sounds good. This sounds fabulous. I think, like, as a one shot, if you've got like a few friends around, it feels like you have to light at least 2 candles. It feels like pentagrams are optional. Unless they're drawn in tea or something.
Yeah.
Is that the vibe? I've seen the art that you've done very much. It's awesome. I also just love the word hogman. In itself menacing, but also hilarious, which is great. Yeah, so that's the news. Other stuff is happening, but like, frankly, like, it's just too ill-formed for us to actually really comment on it properly. Yeah. So there's like, rumors of Microsoft buying Discord and that kind of stuff. But I think it's better to wait for those stories to resolve before you comment on them, to be honest. I'd rather talk about video games, to be honest. So, Marsh, what have you been playing?
I've been playing Mundawen. Mundawen.
That's what I thought it was.
Mundawen.
Yeah.
Which is a first-person folk horror game. Set in the Swiss Alps. It was recommended to me by our pod friend and listener and writer Luke Shaw, who goes by Dynamic Calories on our Discord.
Oh yeah,
he's a very nice man, and it was a really good pick because it's just this incredibly idiosyncratic vision it's largely the work of one man across 6 years, and that shows to good and ill, in that there is a kind of inevitable sort of lack of finesse in certain respects, just because it's that's the scope of the project. But it sort of makes up for that by just being this incredibly singular vision about like a folkloric tradition and a place that I know really very, very little about. And it has this really striking, sort of incredibly consciously analog aesthetic, whereby all the textures for the game, which is entirely sepia, all the textures are hand drawn with these almost kind of frantic, heavy strokes with the soft pencil, and it's sort of the effect of it just really adds to the kind of overall sense of unease about this place. If you can imagine a game texture making you feel itchy, then that's sort of what it's like.
So is it pixelated or lo-fi, or is there any kind of like visual interference with the textures, or is it simply the way they're actually drawn?
They're literally drawn with pen and pencil, and then they're scanned in.
Oh, I see.
The rest of the game is 3D. It's quite a low level sort of geometric fidelity. It's almost like actually intentionally naive, I would say, in some of the ways that it's depicted in 3D. And sort of that sort of jankiness is quite is almost an understood language in games now, because of the kind of the eruption of the sort of Unity scene. But it's not used in the same way here. It's sort of, whereas jankiness often is used for like comic effect and a lot of other games, here it's there's a sort of, like I say, intentional naivety to it, which sort of makes it feel more like this sort of storybook unreality. And there's creepy things with the geometry, like distorting somebody's face in horrific ways to sort of deliver this sort of unsettling effect. It's a really striking looking and feeling game. And you play as this young man who returns to an alpine village of Mundawen after being sent a letter, a rather cryptic letter, about his grandfather, who was apparently burnt to death in some horrific fashion.
Oh, blimey.
And what follows is sort of this like Silent Hillish, dreamlike purgatory, inflected with the sort of the region's very specific folklore, and there's devilish bargains and possessed hay bales and goats and ghosts. And it's all intermingled with what feels like a particularly kind of Swiss preoccupation with invasion and sort of like I don't really know when it's set, because it's obviously before mobile phones but after motor vehicles, right. And it refers to this war ending several decades ago. And some of the intrigue relates to the grandfather's activities during this war, except I don't really know which war that would be, because according to my inadequate education in the matter, Switzerland was famously not invaded in World War I or II. But yeah, in any case, the fact that it occurs in this sort of, for me at least, unplaceable period in time just sort of adds this unsettling, dreamlike nature. And your character is just like weirdly unfazed by all the strange things that are going on. He's just like cheerily patting a goat on the head, and having just been sort of chased by hay bales, brought to life by demonic powers. It's really nicely voiced as well.
Huh.
I think the characters speak a language which isn't Swiss. I think it's a dialect called Romansh or Romansh. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it was completely new to my ears, and it just sounds really interesting. It's like the exact midpoint between German and Latin, and it sounds kind of baroque and polite. And your character is just this very softly spoken and nice and friendly and polite chap. And because he speaks, he with his internal voice. A lot of the time, it's just this very, very gentle kind of mellifluous sound. He should probably crack out an ASMR channel actually on YouTube.
I see the hay bales and they are coming for me on fire and possessed by demons.
Yeah.
Just very gently whispering into your ear. this
Yeah.
incredibly horrific thing is happening. So, maybe it'd be spoilery to get into it, but like the letter from a distant relative who you don't know is both like a gothic conceit, but also like a Lovecraftian conceit. Like it's it's a very old idea,
Mm.
and it's often an excuse to put you into a situation that draws you into a different mystery entirely. I wonder, like, what's it like when you actually get into the town? Do you have a direction? Is there some sort of sense of what's going on?
Well, no. It's hard to say, really. I mean, it takes a while for you to unpick what's going on. Clearly, things are very, very weird. Like it gets surreal and strange right off the bat. You start having visions and space warps around you, and other things happen. So it's quite disorienting. It's not. I would say it's not particularly good at directing you in terms of the sort of mechanical aspects of the game. There's it's a. I mean, it's a sort of first-person puzzle / walking simulator in the vein of like a lot of these sort of horror games, and the aspects of it which I think are quite rough and ready. The puzzling fetch quest stuff feels both a little kind of shallow and facile, but also unnecessarily obscure.
All of the worst things.
Yeah, I mean, well, I say this now because I want to stress that stuff is almost completely mitigated, I think, by the atmosphere and the uniqueness of the setting.
Right.
But it is one of these games where I think if you get stuck, you should absolutely cheat immediately and look up what you're meant to do next. I've been stuck a few times, and there was no value in me being confused because it was being confused by the budget ceiling for QA.
Right.
Like at one point, my only explicitly stated objective was to go to a certain place, and yet if I tried to go there, my character would stop and say, "I'll go there later." So I didn't know what to do. And what it turned out, what I had to do was feed a severed goat head some water and then have a conversation with it. So I think that's not really an interaction that it's fair to expect players to intuit.
This also this speaks to a lot of sort of adventure game friction, where the character that is supposed to be your avatar can actively rebel against you. Can actually just say, "No, I'm not going to do that." And that's like it's the equivalent of like if in a sort of semi-open world game, the invisible wall that you get to, where they've just not designed the game past that point. So in flight sims, for example, the game will literally just forcibly turn your plane around and fly you back into the playable zone. But even more awkwardly, like in a first person open world game, you'll just like literally have to sort of bounce against an invisible wall that makes no sense at all until you turn back and sort of accept that it's all a farce. But the equivalent in adventure games is literally your own character saying no.
Yeah,
which is so obnoxious these days.
I suspect it's there as I think that probably got in. I mean, I have no idea really, but I mean, it's one of those things that feels like it was probably introduced to stop players walking off into the open world and not being able to do what they want to do because they've just gone many miles in the wrong direction. So I suspect they put that there as a sort of way of funneling players back to the immediate task. But it just it hasn't necessarily had the amount of QA required to make its objectives really make sense. Yeah. And there's other things that are shonky about it. Like there's stealth combat in the game, and there probably really shouldn't be.
The best combat.
Yeah. You encounter various different kinds of enemies, and nearly all attack you in ways which blind and slow you. Which just makes you more and more vulnerable to their attacks. And it's just a really tedious way to die. And the game just doesn't have the fine, fluid sense of embodiment that might make it a good combat game or make the combat encounters feel negotiable. They just always feel cumbersome and unwelcome. I was talking about this. I was wondering, would the game be better if they were just gone? Because it would make the game a lot less scary. There would be a very reduced sense of threat. But I think I would just turn off the enemies, actually.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think I would. I think I would too. Based on what you said, like blinding, slow, and also just like a lack of kind of tactile feeling of movement or responsiveness from the character it's all the worst things I can imagine from a combat system, especially like a sort of stealth system. If you're trying to sneak around things that can blind and slow you, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, it is. I find it very stressful, but mostly because I was stressed out by the feeling of inconvenience of encountering these enemies, rather than
Right.
their actual kind of in fiction threat. But I like I say, like all of that, all of these problems feel like a lesser part of what it accomplishes. Which is just this sort of scintillatingly unusual aesthetic vision. Like the sound design is really good as well.
Huh.
This is, I think, this is part of the project. So, like I said, it was mostly the work of a single developer across a long time, but he was able to bring in some sound designers to help with the sound design, unsurprisingly, and they've captured they went up into the Alps and captured lots of different kinds of wind, creaking wood and
Cool.
crunching snow and stuff. And just it sounds fantastic at all times, and it does this thing I really like, where if you look at a painting or a photo in the game, the camera just begins to slowly pan in on it, and you start to be able to hear sound from within the reality of the picture. And it's really evocative. You're just looking at a picture of a church, and suddenly you can hear the kind of the sound of bells ringing, or a bridge being constructed, and you start hearing the sound of men calling to each other, and hammers clocking against wood. And it's kind of a feature I wish Images had in real life.
I think we should introduce this sort of soundscape to the Quaint Crowbar podcast. Have a sort of like faintly, deep voices singing hymns at half speed. Just underneath these descriptions, just to give that a bit of ambience. That sounds great, though. It reminds me of so I was talking about Siberia on the podcast like about a month ago.
Oh yeah,
and it's everything you said reminds me of that, where the actual kind of the functional bits of moving around and solving the puzzles is just like total work a day, really tedious, and we didn't have to do any of it. But the actual overall idea and the sense of the story there, and the sense of atmosphere, made it all worthwhile. So that's really cool. You've made me want to play it.
It's worth having a look at. I mean, I think even if you don't stick with it all the way through, or you get frustrated and give up, there's just something. I mean, the charming central character is nice, and it's a nicely wrought fable at its center. But like, just the fact that it evokes a culture that isn't well exposed by the typical Western horror milieu. I think that's just really interesting. It's something to just to experience.
Yeah,
I hope it's not a one-off for the developer, because he sort of came to this project sort of semi-accidentally. It was originally going to be a comic, I think, and it sort of just segued into a game. But I hope now that they're in the in the field of games that they don't leave it again. I want to see what else they do next.
That sounds really fun. By fun, I mean obviously like just deeply unsettling, perhaps, in a sort of slow burn way.
Yeah,
which is my favourite type of horror, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm not big on jump scare horror. I think it's cheap. It's very effective on me, but it doesn't interest me. But this is good. It's just sinister stuff.
Oh, Sinister's good. I like that. That sounds great.
Good goats. What have you been playing, Tom?
I've been playing probably like the opposite end of the colour wheel from that. I've been playing a Doom Eternal.
Oh yeah, that is literally the opposite.
It's like, which again is like on its face, it's supposed to be a sort of hellish horror thing, but it's not at all. It's a total power trip. The whole thing is an incredible power trip where you're incredibly fast, incredibly mobile. You're constantly given guns and upgrades. It's a first-person shooter, I should mention. And it's the sequel to the 2016, I think, Doom. But I much prefer Eternal because it's just goes so much further with its setting. So originally in the Doom remake, you go to Mars and everything's just kind of orange. And if you see a green light, that's where you need to go. In this, like the second level of the game, is you're fighting in the ruins of Earth after a demonic invasion from hell, and there are huge mechs that humans have built, fighting giant demons that are stories tall, and they are frozen mid-combat because everything has been kind of cratered. But as Doom Guy, just a bloke with nice muscles and a super shotgun, invades the whole area, finds a power crate or whatever the fuck, a battery, inserts the battery into the arm of one of these mechs, and it punches a hole through a giant demon's heart, and then that's your entrance into the next level, which is set inside the giant demon. And it's so good. It's so good. I love it. It's I've got a stupid watch that measures my heart rate, and I've been checking it. I've been using it to sort of check what games do to my heart rate.
Oh yeah,
just because often it's such an unconscious thing. Like, you don't realize when you're in a state of heightened awareness if you're really into a game. Like, if I find if you're suddenly like in the zone, or you're really into the world and actually like concentrating really hard on trying to click on things' heads, you don't necessarily know what's going on with your body. And I found that an interesting thing with Doom Eternal is if I play it with a podcast on, it's mediocre. If I play it with the headphones on and the full soundtrack going, it is like turbo excitement.
Oh wow, right.
And it's a great sign of just immense sound design in terms of like when you pick stuff up. It's got very old fashioned. When you pick up shield pieces, it's got very, very old fashioned, quite lo-fi sounds that go ching 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 as you run over them. When you sort of like reload a gun, it goes ka-chink. When your kind of dash move reloads, it goes bloop. And so you have all this really, really artificial noises layered over a very sophisticated soundscape, which is made up of heavy metal music, sometimes dubstep, but also this endless screaming of monsters that are coming at you. And I think it's a magnificent achievement, and the fact that the movement in this game is so responsive. It reminds me of Titanfall 2, but I actually prefer Doom Eternal's movement because it's so decisive. Like, if your dash move is just like almost instantaneous, the responsiveness is incredible. And there are actually like sort of jumping puzzles that require you to shoot stuff while you're jumping through the puzzle. And normally that would be the most irritating thing in the world, but because all the jumps are just so measured, and all the levels of, even though they look incredible, and this incredible sort of heavy metal album cover look and feel to them, actually like the visual language of what is reachable, what you can swing on, what you can land on, and very generous like mantling. So if you're close enough to a platform, your guy will just like clamber up onto it. It's like, oh yeah, we saw what you were going for there. You're close enough. We'll just give you the win. And it's just brilliant design. It's just brilliant movement design, brilliant sound design. And that put my heart rate up 20, as opposed to when I was playing it like without like the sound, I'd be a solid like kind of. I'm not very fit at the moment, so I'm just like 95 beats per minute, solid, uncaring, listening to This American Life or some shit, and learning about important gun safety law issues in the US as I was blasting demons. And I've actually because I've spent so much time playing games on the second screen, or playing a game on the first screen with like a program on the second screen, or like a podcast in my headphones. But so it's great to find a game that actually rewards you for fully investing and concentrating on it, and it deserves that concentration because it makes the game so much better. And also, if you don't concentrate on it, you're going to die. Like, it's like so fast, and so it requires so much from you in terms of response. I can't imagine not playing it with a mouse and keyboard. it's glorious on mouse and keyboard. Like, and I'm not like a advocate for mouse keyboard over controllers. I love controllers. I use them all the time for like third person, like Devil May Cry 5 controller every day. But this demands mouse and keyboard. I think like I think you're getting a secondary experience if you don't have a nice mouse and a nice keyboard for this.
Right.
And
because you need to be constantly jinking and turning, right?
Yeah, and also
suddenly
turning like 180, like literally just you need to be able to flick the mouse to go 180. And some of the jumping puzzles require this. But also, if you hear a kind of a cacodemon gurgling behind you, you have to be able to spin 180, fire a grenade into its gob, and then when it swallows it and starts flashing, you press E and you zoom in and rip its eye out, and then get health. But all of that requires like that a little bit of mouse dexterity, but it's also forgiving enough. Like, so again, when an enemy flashes, which is when an enemy starts flashing, you get like an execution kill from them, and that generates health and other things. If you set them on fire first with your flamethrower, you also get shields. So that's cool. So you're sort of like juggling all of these kind of resource concerns, but as you're doing incredible acrobatics, the game makes you feel good at games. I think like my favorite action games do this. Devil May Cry does this as well. Games where like I'm not like an amazing Twitch shooter. I'm not even a very good one. But going through this campaign so far, it's made me feel like a king. It's brilliant. It's just such an amazing power trip. And yeah, it's just like I don't even listen to heavy metal that much. I don't listen to that much dubstep, but in this context, it's absolutely perfectly matched to the to the games, the levels. It's really nicely paced. There are little bits where there are sort of puzzles. There are little bits where there's even bloody lore. There's loads of lore. There's a whole like kind of Mass Effect style codex full of details of the Nephilim, which I've not touched at all, and never will. But it's there if you want it, I guess. But no, it's been an absolute joy playing this. Like it's sort of woken me up to games in a way, because I've been playing games so placidly in lockdown for about 6 months. In terms of like turn-based JRPGs, stuff that doesn't really require my full attention. So to actually have a game that demands that and rewards it so well has been wonderful. Love
That's
it.
really interesting. I mean, because I played a bit of what's it called? Doom.
It's the first one.
Eternal. No, Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
And I thought actually I came away from it thinking that this is probably a kind of game that you could sort of get into a zen sort of space playing, because a lot of the encounters are you're sort of locked in a space, and you just have to sort of find a repeatable loop around that space where you sort of murder everything within it that spawns for a period of time. And I felt like that was sort of like a parkour challenge that you could interpret without accessing the full requirements of your brain. Like you could swim around this space like a shark, always moving
click
forward.
On heads. Yeah.
But I think at the point where I stopped playing it, maybe I stopped playing it because it started to demand more of me. So does it sort of reach a level of complexity where you really actually need to be alert and thinking?
Yes, definitely. And that's entirely down to the armory for one part, and also even more importantly, actually, the way that you gain resources by using your armory. So you've got a chainsaw, and if you chainsaw a guy, you'll get ammo. If you get a guy down to a low enough health, they'll start to flash. That gets you health. If you set them on fire and then kill them, that gives you shields. And you're constantly juggling all of those resources as you're flying around and as you're fighting. And then also add on to the fact that enemies demand specific weapons. So, for example, there are the goons that show up with energy shields, and you've got an energy blaster, a plasma blaster. And so then you need to switch to the plasma blaster, and if you overload that shield, it explodes and it kills everything around that enemy. And so you're having to, like, after a certain portion through the game, probably about 20% through the game, you're having to use your armory effectively in order to clear these rooms. Otherwise, you're going to you're just going to get ruined. And so like the Cacodemon example is one thing. Like you've got like on left control, you've got a grenade that recharges every minute, but you've got a shotgun, and one of the mods for the shotgun, you can upgrade all the weapons in different ways as well to improve their effectiveness against different enemies. But the normal shotgun has a grenade launcher as well, sort of built into it. Hold right click, tap left click, throw a grenade. And when the Cacodemon opens its giant mouth to do a devastating bite that will probably kill you, you shunt a grenade into its gob, and that's how you defeat that enemy. And what ends up happening, like after a few hours of the game, it will throw so many different types of enemy at you at the same time that you're managing the battlefield, you're managing your resources in terms of ammo, health, shields, and yeah, it demands nothing but full attention. I don't like at that point. It could never be a second screen game for me. Like it's
right.
And it's amazing. I think it's brilliant. Like as an interpretation of the Doom fantasy, that actually brings it into modern shooters, and also it's a rare example like Titanfall of a first-person shooter that really a modern first-person shooter that really loves giving you mobility, speed as a character, which used to be the fake. Used to be the fact with like Unreal, Quake 2, the Quake games. You get jump pads in Doom Eternal. You get double jump and dash, mid-air dashes and that kind of stuff. You're really, really fast all the time. And I feel like that's the thing that sort of the militaristic first-person shooter bias that Call of Duty has introduced has sort of denied us that sense of pace. Like Tribes as well is another great example of like skiing, right? And all of the joy of just not having to adhere to actual rules of gravity in video games. Like, why should we? Why not have double jumps and dashes and fly all over the arena, like shooting demons in the head? So I find it to be like quite. It's weird to say it's refreshing when it's such a throwback, but it is.
Do you think it is a throwback, though? It feels like something completely new. Like people have said that it's more true to the original Doom than Doom 3, for example. But I don't know that it is. Like the incredible kind of arcadey feel to it doesn't seem like something which is a callback, but something completely fresh.
It feels fresh to me, but I think like I didn't experience Doom like when it was actually in its contemporary state. I've gone back to it. I still love Doom 2 and stuff, but you can never claim that it has the kind of finesse of movement and the flair, the movement of momentum, and the sense that your character is flying around the environment and that you're amazing. Like it's still a great game, but I feel like the new Dooms do build on that, and they are different. Actually, I think they should be extremely highly rated. I'm really looking forward to getting into the DLC as well once I've actually beaten the campaign. So I've seen folks on Twitter like saying that it's like super, super intense, and that's exactly what I want from this game. I want to have to spend, put my entire brain onto the screen and kill so many hundreds of demons, ideally in the most heavy metal kind of album cover environments possible. It's been really nice. I've really enjoyed it. Just talking about it makes me want to play it.
I should go back to it and push through my initial lazy resentment of it. Yeah, because I think at the point where it started asking me to really manage a large number of different resources and deal with specialized enemies, I was just like, yeah.
I felt myself adopting almost like unconsciously adopting just an incredibly cruel sort of cost benefit analysis thing when I'm falling down onto a battlefield where there's loads of enemies, and I sort of like have a little glance bottom right, bottom left, see where my armor's at, where my health's at, where my ammo's at, And then I'm just like, okay, well, a bit short on ammo. Press C to chainsaw, and then you get this incredibly gory thing of like just literally carving a thing into 5 pieces, and then loads and loads of ammo just flies out of it. I was like, okay, well, I've acquired that resource. now on to the next resource acquisition task, which is I think I need a bit of health actually. So yeah, I'll sort of shoot this man in the legs. Just until he starts flashing on the verge of death, and then I'll charge in and press E and then chop his head off and get health. Yeah, so it makes you into a monster, which is great. It should. And it's so like I feel like we're bouncing from one corner of the color wheel to the other, and I'm going to bounce the other way this time and introduce Hunt Showdown as a topic.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the absolute turbo opposite of a shooter that I've been trying to sort of like tentatively learn through tutorials and through like just little just kind of like just go to the odd pub game and then get out again. And Marsh, you've got loads of experience playing this, so and a new update's been released for it. It's still alive and well, and I really want to get good at it. But yeah, give me your advice.
I'm not the person to advise you. You see, what I've learned is that my abilities have really everything have completely atrophied.
Oh no!
But I think that's the reason that I can still play Hunt is that there's a strategic space in which even an aging loser like myself can survive, despite having incredibly poor reaction times. So I don't know that the way that I play it is the way that a normal human being should play it, if you know what I mean, because I am compensating for my weaknesses in a big way.
Does anyone go into Hunt as a kind of like Call of Duty Twitch shooter though? Like that just gives you your position away. Like let's just sort of give an overview of it. Like you're either solo or in a team of up to 3, I believe. And you're in a map that's shared by a few other teams, also playing co-op, and you're hunting NPC monsters. And in order to do so, you have to find clues and eventually find the actual boss monster in the center. Once you've actually killed the boss monster, you get their treasure, and then you have to extract as fast as possible by going to one of the extraction points on the edge of the map while you're being fiercely hunted by anyone else who's still alive on the map. That's about right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Yeah, there's lots of aspects of the game which aren't known to you as a player. Like you don't know where the bosses are, you don't know where other players are spawned, and a lot of the game is about sort of unpicking the mystery of what's happening on the map through telltale signs and sounds, hearing distant gunshots, and then working out, so there's a team up there. They're probably on their first clue, which means they only know that so much of this map is still available as a kind of location of the boss monster. That's the stuff I really enjoy, the kind of the sleuthing stuff of it, and the way that the pace of the game just abruptly changes from being this sort of exploratory, tense thing where you're hoping not to encounter other people, to being a siege, to being a sudden flight out of the map, being chased by everybody else. That's what's cool about it.
Yeah. For folks who haven't played it, like when you actually, if you find the boss monster, and they can be pretty hideous, those things. A new one has just been introduced, and once you actually, like, if you manage to take it down, you have to sort of sit on its corpse for a few minutes while every single other human player in the world can press a button to see exactly where you are. So that's the sort of siege moment, isn't it? Like that.
Yeah.
I'm that's really horrifying. I love like rushing in and trying to kill them, but
it's really interesting watching really skillful players have a shot at this. There's a guy called Lucan who I really enjoy watching his videos. I don't really watch a lot of gaming videos, but I do like Lucan's. He's an incredibly kind of softly spoken Liverpudlian guy. Never ever seems to get angry in the way that I do with Hunt all the time. But what's remarkable about him, he obviously has very good Twitch skills, for one thing. But above and beyond that, he's incredibly good at anticipating where people will be and where they'll move through a space. Like I think Hunt's interesting. I mean, I guess we do this with all shooters, but you know, when you're playing a shooter, you're sort of also running a sort of simulation in your brain about which is intended to predict where other players will go and what they'll do.
Yeah.
And it turns out mine's not very accurate, and his is extraordinarily accurate. You know, because he'll get shot from somewhere, run off into a bush, and then he'll just look in this direction. You'll be like, why the fuck are you looking down there? There's nothing. That wasn't where you were shot from. And he knows somehow that from the position he was shot from, the most sensible way to be flanked would be around here. And, you know, instantaneously somebody's head pops around the corner of a shed and he blows it off.
Yeah.
It's kind of uncanny.
I
say, I mean, that's not the way I play because I can't. So I tend to play a lot more cautiously and try and ambush people, ideally in the open. I don't like getting cornered, and I don't really like being the one under siege. So I tend to try and fight mid range where with a weapon that is reasonably fast firing, so I can just hopefully outpace the shooting of my enemy and put them down in a hail of semi-accurate fire.
That's all it takes. So do you find that so in my experience so far, the bosses have spawned inside buildings?
Yeah.
With it seems carefully designed, and like they're designed as almost like a multiplayer level. In the middle of the map, like is that what it's always like, or can they spawn out in the open? Can they spawn like in the water or something? Like, I mean,
it was so actually that was a design decision they made, was to restrict the places that they could spawn. They did originally think they might have monsters that like a boss monster that roams the entire level, but I think they tried it and they found that it didn't work. That it maybe opened up too many variables, or it opened things up to exploits by players.
Right.
So all the bosses currently spawn inside buildings. It was mooted. I think there was like a piece of concept art for a big albino crocodile at some point, which doesn't exist in the game currently. But if it did, presumably it would spawn in the water. But I think that would. I think because each of the sort of compounds, like these sort of semi-fortified building areas where the bosses can spawn, I think because they have to be boss agnostic. To some extent, you wouldn't be able to have. Oh, it's an aquatic monster, but you know he needs to be able to fight in a.
Oh, he's on the second floor of this warehouse.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I was thinking particularly about the spider, which is an incredible piece of animation. Like, it creeps me the hell out. Like, it's, but it you have to. I'd love to quiz the designers on this, but presumably they must have to know the exact geometry of what the thing is going to have to move around in order to actually have it move in so convincingly and so quickly. I don't know.
It's got to have been a terrible QA task for them, because this thing can scuttle over walls and through tiny gaps and over the ceilings. So there's no real. I mean, that vastly increases the amount of kind of navigable space that it can occupy.
Yeah.
Pathing, that must be horrendous. There have been quite a lot of bugs where it's got stuck somewhere, or many patches ago it could get killed and then it would just die in some inaccessible place. Now when you kill it sort of scuttles half alive to a convenient point, and then carks it. Which is useful.
I mean, yeah, what does it flip upside down and do the horrible thing that spiders do?
Oh yeah, God.
Oh, my skin's crawling just thinking about it. That's a great boss monster. Also, I love that solution to that problem. It's like, no, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
solves the problem for everyone. Keeps the match moving. So I fought that one. I fought the flame dude.
The pig man, yes.
Yeah,
the butcher
as well. The butcher, that's right. Yes,
very large man with no head, but a decapitated pig stapled to his body.
Yes, I tried shooting that as his weak point, and it turns out it kind of wasn't. So I ran away.
I don't think it has a weak point, but it can fall off, and then it continues to scream.
Amazing. So this is from Crytek, and it's the best thing they've ever made.
Oh yeah,
easily. Obviously, they made Crysis, etc., etc. But this is it's a genuinely innovative multiplayer game, and I think I've not played anything quite like it.
No, I keep on meaning to play Tarkov, which I think is pretty comparable. But Tarkov just has this much more kind of intense fascination with minutiae when it comes to like loadouts and guns and gear, and that kind of stuff kind of puts me off.
Right.
I'm just not really interested in changing out different kinds of barrels for guns. And unfortunately, Hunt has sort of slightly kind of flirted in that direction recently with the recent patch where it's introduced different kinds of ammo types, which each have their different kind of effects, like poison ammo and full metal jackets and things, and they all they kind of massage the speed of the bullets and the amount of damage that they do, and obviously they can have then secondary effects as well. And all of that stuff just sort of, it feels a bit too kind of fiddly. I don't like spending a lot of time in menus generally.
Yeah.
This just adds the amount of time, and it also creates that snowball effect where it benefits players who are doing really well in the meta, and it benefits by virtue of that, it benefits better players. And you don't really want to do that. I think you want to try and level the playing field between the really good players and the scrubs like me, not simply out of some act of generosity towards fools, but because there's not a sufficient player population for matchmaking to keep people within their own skill brackets.
Yes.
And so what will happen is that, people like me will be put up against dead-eyed killers, and they'll quit the game eventually because it'll just be a terrible grinding down to nothing over and over again, which does periodically happen. I'm not quite sure what goes on with the matchmaking in Hunt. It's been through different phases where the game's felt quite different because the matchmaking is obviously use different statistics in order to put people together. Right now, it seems like I every time I die to somebody with a 2.5 KD ratio, and I shouldn't be playing people with a 2.5 KD ratio. I should be playing people with a around 1 KD ratio, but the game doesn't seem capable of, or doesn't have a large enough audience. Maybe that kind of the population at my skill level is sufficient to fill a map.
I think that this is an interesting quandary actually, because first of all, the fantasy of it is a survivalist horror fantasy where guns feel like they should be lethal, like one shot to the head in any circumstance, no matter what, whether you have poison equipped or electric equipped or whatever the fuck, that should work on a human.
Yeah. And
maybe you could take boss monsters down a bit faster with the right thing, but when it comes to the PvP aspect of it, it feels like it should be quite pure. And it sounds like maybe it's moving away from that a little bit. That's they've created such an interesting hybrid PvP PvE thing that maybe no one they've got no template to base it on. They're sort of trying to create longevity by copying other systems. Maybe, I don't know. I'm completely guessing. Just based on what you've said. You actually know the game better than me.
Well, no. I mean, I think it's very difficult to interpret what's happening at the studio, because especially since for a long time, like this last year and a half, has been marked in the development of this game by making it actually more of a level playing field, by making good weapons cheaper and cheap weapons better, and that's done a lot to address the kinds of frustrations that you'd get where good players would just be able to afford, a weapon which was particularly fast firing and incredibly powerful. Now it seems like this is the first change which has sort of retarded that movement towards a level playing field. It's still yet to play out. I don't know how significant those ammo types will be in the long term, but it's sort of already noticeable from a fussiness aspect rather than just in the game. And there is something like you say, I prefer the combat to be digital. You can, once you're downed, you can be revived by surviving teammates, and that is sort of like a concession to non-digital combat that I will accept. I don't actually like playing with a team of 3. I prefer a team of 2 because that does make those encounters more digital again. Like, it's much easier to wipe a team of 2 than it is a team of 3 because there's always somebody who can revive one of the other people while your attention is divided, and that can kind of becomes just frustrating. It just elongates the length of time for any one engagement in an artificial way. It can just sort of sop up your time in the map when you kind of want to be done with one thing and then move on to a next. You don't really want to be in endless wars of attrition because that's I mean, attrition, does that sound fun?
Everyone loves that.
And that's sort of my beef with the custom ammo too, is that it's this sort of just unnecessary extra element to combat, which will just make things fussier. Actually, maybe that's not right. Maybe that's not right at all. I think my problem with it is that all these extra effects that you can apply to your ammunition and then to your enemy are things that you can already cause your enemy to suffer. So, I mean, you have Molotov cocktails. If you want to set an enemy on fire, you don't need to have, the particular kind of ammo type which does that, the incendiary ammo. You could just throw a Molotov cocktail, or you could throw a concertina bomb, which fills a space full of barbed wire and causes people to bleed, so they need to heal themselves. Or you can throw like a hive bomb, which causes people to be chased by bees and poisoned. But the difference there is that all of those actions require some risk on the part of the aggressor. Like, in order to throw a Molotov cocktail at somebody, you need to be within range, you need to get your Molotov out, obviously, so you can't be shooting at that time, and then you need to wind your arm back and then lob it, and during that period, you're exposed, and that creates like an interesting risk-reward. And I feel like the custom ammo, though, the only risk you're taking is in the menu of the game before the game even loads. And if you're a player who's doing really well and has got loads of in-game bucks, then it's no risk at all. It's just not very interesting. I don't know who it's for, but I mean, I guess there must be people at the studio or among the players who are champing at the bit for this sort of added level of unnecessary complexity. I don't really understand it myself.
Maybe it has like aspirations to be like a living game like Destiny or something like that, and maybe it feels like it needs to have excess systems on top of the combat to actually sort of encourage players to keep on grinding for that. For me, that, like, based on the little I've played, it's totally antithetical to the whole thing.
Yeah,
remains to be seen.
It does remain to be seen. It's a new change, so maybe they'll roll it back, or maybe they won't. I don't know. But yes, the new boss will be interesting. It's some sort of crow thing. It hasn't been unlocked yet. It's technically, the patch has dropped, but players have to, as a community, earn a certain number of points during a sort of like a...
I hate that shit.
Yeah, but it's just a sort of an event to get people playing, to introduce them.
It's the engagement exercise.
Yeah, but whatever. Yeah, I'm not really interested. Just wake me up when the boss is here.
Exactly. Yeah, quite right.
But yeah,
at least there's a new boss coming, and
yeah, and there's a new map coming later in the year as well.
Oh,
which
cool!
Is exciting. And
I think that's the sort of thing that I think for this sort of game, that's what actually renews it. Is the idea of like a whole new map, a whole new kind of environment, and like, I don't think you need the sort of layered elemental ammo types when you can just put a new map out. But obviously, that's the hardest thing to do because you've got to balance it around the 5 or 6 bosses you've already created and where they can or can't spawn, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So
and those maps are just so incredibly finely tuned as well. Like,
yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's aesthetic, but it's also they're incredibly well considered for the kinds of action that will occur in it. You notice as you play it that convenient sightlines that you want are rendered useless to you by a well-placed tree stump. and like this happens all the time.
A level designer was here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Great game. I can't wait to get deeper into it. I'm gonna get better at it.
I want to play it with you. I want to play it with you really badly.
You gotta teach me, Marsh. You gotta teach me how to not get immediately fucked up by the crows. The crows.
Yeah. Have you been playing anything else?
I
saw that you had been playing a little bit of Mortal Kombat 11.
I have actually. Yeah, I've got my fight stick, and what I've learned about fight sticks and beat 'em ups is that the fight stick makes me much worse at the game.
Oh, really?
But also makes me I actually have much more fun from the simple act of just like throwing the stick around and slapping buttons like a seal.
By what means do you think it makes you worse at it?
Well, I think because I'm so used to executing special moves with like micro thumb movements on a gamepad.
Oh.
So the hardest one to do, in my experience, is like toward, down toward, which is anyone who's ever tried to, control Ryu and do the kind of massive spinning uppercut thing, will know that very well. And theoretically, with a stick, and I've got a good stick. It's a really good fight stick system. But even then, I just sort of just flap it around like an idiot, and then I slap the button, and then my guy does like a weak punch that is easily blocked, and I get countered by a combo and then die. And that happens often, even as like single player. But as the kind of, there's something really fun about it. Like, it's just fun, like in a really childish way, to have a joystick and giant buttons that you slap open hand like an idiot. And yeah, so yeah, I've been enjoying that in Mortal Kombat 11. And Mortal Kombat 11 is who makes it? The same people who do the Injustice games. Which are also very good, and they're very, very similar systems actually, but they're extremely well produced. They look beautiful. They're the best looking fighting games in terms of like 3D graphics, if you care about stuff like special lighting and special kind of like anti-aliasing and stuff, and they look great. I would always pick Guilty Gear or Arc, any Arc Systems Works game over them, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, sorry, just sort of like popped up in my head and disagreed with me really hard. So okay, so if you're completely new to fighting games, I would go for a Mortal Kombat, and because they're fully voiced, fully kind of mocapped, beautifully produced cutscenes in the single player campaigns, and they also have very, very good tutorials, and the combat system, as far as I can tell, is extremely good. But once you've gone past that, once you've maybe like played a few of those, move on to an Arc Systems game. Go on to Dragon Ball Z. See how that treats you. Go on to Blast Blue. The one word that Marsh hates the most. Go on to Guilty Gear. And like, there's a whole wealth of really fun, exciting action games to play there. Just there's so much to play. Like the Arc Systems games just give you so much in terms of story modes, in terms of tutorials and stuff. Anyway, I feel like I've gushed a lot on this podcast about a lot of things I've been playing this week. I've just been really loving games recently.
That's a good way to be. That is a good way to be.
Super Mario 3D World is another one that I'd love to plug. Obviously not a PC game. It was originally a Wii U game, I think, and has been sort of like republished on the Switch. And if you happen to be in a situation where you can sit on a couch next to someone who can play with you, it is just a wonderfully funny, vicious co-op game.
Vicious?
Yes, it has an edge to it. So it's a combination of like classic 3D Mario levels that are all like expertly designed by Nintendo, and some of them are puzzle levels based on the Toad series, which I've not played yet, but like that involves kind of there's like rotating arenas in order to acquire stars and that kind of stuff, and then suddenly like you jump to the next thing and it'll be a kind of race to the finish. But like if you're playing with another person, it pits you against one another in very specific ways. Like famously, at the end of a Mario level, there's a giant flag, and what you want to do is jump onto the top point of the flag, so you get the most points. When there's two of you, there's a competition to get the most points, not just on that pole, but throughout the entire level, and the winner gets a crown. And it's utterly meaningless, but it takes on a kind of like, it does take on a sort of weight. It does take on a meaning if you're playing next to someone who constantly gets the crown and boasts about it, which inevitably they will, because that's why they put it in the game. And so you want to beat their score and then get the crown, or they fall off a cliff, the crown drops, then you get the crown. And it turns into a sort of like co-op fight within. You're trying to obviously, conquer the level, but the crown is always this sort of thing that you want to actually really get. And I've had loads of fun with my fiance playing this game, because anyone who's familiar with Billie Eilish song, You Should See Me in the Crown, that's the chorus. When she picks it up as Luigi, we call ourselves the B team. I'm Toad, she's Luigi. We could be Mario, and we could be anyone, but we've chosen the limpest characters because it's funny. Also, when they die, their screams are hilarious, which is a very good reason to select a character. But when she picks up the crown, she goes, "You should see me in a crown," and she'll just shout that at me. And then I'm like, oh, I've got to get that back now. And that's the only way I'm going to return the favor is to get the crown back, and then I get to be in a crown. Yeah, that's been my world recently, to be honest. I've been eating cereal and playing games.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. Can't last, but it's not bad.
No, I mean, you'll probably die of malnutrition.
Yeah,
just eat cereal.
Oh, tangerines as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that does offset the low nutrient aspect of cereal.
That'll give me an extra 2 years. Life, I don't know. Don't know where I'm at in life. Oh God, lockdown. May it end soon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, Marsh, anything else you've been playing?
No, but I can I tell you about a madness that enveloped me today?
Yes, please.
Well, you see, I recently learnt, Tom, that in the 15th century, Edward, the Duke of York, wrote a book about hunting.
Okay.
And it was called Master of Game. Apparently, it's mostly a translation from a preceding French work, but it's nonetheless one of the earliest books about hunting in the English language, and there are very, very few copies of it. One of the kind of famed features of this work, alongside being like this exhaustive catalogue of how to cultivate and murder various animals of Britain, and what do you do if your hawk is sick, kind of things. It's one of its notable features is that it contains an index of 1,100 names that Edward, the Duke of York, thought were suitable for dogs. Names like, I just love the idea that he was sitting there in the 15th century just imagining different kinds of dogs he might like dogs with names like Stikefast or Solace. And one of my favourite is Have Good Day, which is a really cute name for
I
a
mean,
dog.
so we've lived in Bath many years, and you know Beckford's Tower.
I do. I love it.
And Beckford is a very entertaining twat. Who built himself a tower. Actually, he constructed his own road, separate road into town because he didn't want to see people.
Yes.
When he's got it's actually a beautiful sight to visit if you go to Bath. I'd really recommend going up it. And he built this tower, and he was very bad at commissioning towers. Most of them fell over, but this one stayed up, and that's where he went up to read. And I love the idea that like he would go up there and read a book about what to name his next dog that will soon die.
Well, exactly. I mean, who would not wish to partake of, a full list of 15th century names for very good boys? I certainly would. And let me tell you, Tom,
yes,
I fucking couldn't find it.
What?
I couldn't find it. I've searched every scanned version of the various manuscripts that survive that I could find in the digital catalogues of the most hallowed libraries of this civilization, if we can call it such.
I mean, we can't anymore.
It's not in the Bodleian's 2 copies.
How can it not be in the Bodleian?
It's not, because it's a shower of piss, Tom. That's why, the fucking Bodleian. It's not in the Beinecke library, is it? It's not in the British libraries. It's not even in the 19th century reprint with its foreword by Theodore Roosevelt.
What?
The dogs just weren't good enough for Roosevelt. They weren't good enough boys for him. The fucking prick.
What?
Anyway, so I haven't been able to find. I want to see all 1,100 names. I don't want a selection of highlights picked by somebody else. I want the full list. I can't find it. And that is my lockdown story.
That must be. It must be in the Bodleian somewhere. The Bodleian.
Oh, the books are, but those particular versions of the manuscript don't seem to include this index.
This is like a sort of Indiana Jones style quest where you have to go into the Bodleian, and there's some sort of like deeper underlayer to it that houses the most corrupt
dog names
known to man. Of which this is the richest text, which is also, protected by lasers, etc. In a glass case.
Obviously.
I don't know if anyone outside of our country knows what the Bodleian is. It's the Oxford Library. Every publisher in Britain, I believe, is required to send a copy of their texts to the Bodleian. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's true of the Bodleian. It's definitely true of the British Library, or that's its reputation anyway.
Yeah, so, there are those repositories. But no, I'm just... you've Nigel Faraged me. You've undermined my faith in the British institutions on which I've come to rely. And now, what am I to do?
Yeah, even the famed rare book libraries of Yale couldn't provide this in America either. So I don't know. If anybody finds is better at finding this than I am, let me know. I want to see those dog names. I want to fucking see them.
If we don't see them, we're going to make them.
Yes, there you go. That'll get me through the remainder of lockdown.
A promise and a threat.
Shall we do some questions?
I think we should, actually. Yeah.
That's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have a question from David, who says, "Hi all. As I plod through middle age, one of the factors I take into account when starting a new game is how long it takes to complete. I can get in about an hour's worth of gaming per day, if I'm lucky, so I try to be careful about what I get into. I also have very little patience for games that don't clearly feel worthwhile to me, and will drop something after about 20 minutes if it hasn't grabbed me or is being obtuse. How much weight does game length carry for you? Are you compelled to complete games, or are you happy to set them aside once you've seen enough? Take care, David."
I really like this question because it has changed. Like, my answer would change if I was 21 and not 35, which I happen to be. I actually, I've got loads of sympathy for the idea that if a game doesn't show you its worth within half an hour, or like not worth, but show you why it should be interesting and why it should give you your time within an hour,
Yeah.
or so. I mean, it's an arbitrary time limit, but around that kind of time that you can give to it, then it shouldn't expect you to kind of put another 50 hours into discovering why it's good. Which is why I don't know, like a lot of the that's why so many people haven't played Dark Souls, because if you go into Dark Souls for the first half an hour, it's just kind of shit.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably a shit for like 2 hours actually, like, until you actually figure out what's going on. And if there's lots going on in your life, and you've got this precious gaming time that's like time for you, then why put it into Dark Souls? And why do that without an entire universe of critics saying that you should,
Right.
without actually kind of like perhaps taking into account the fact that it's sometimes tutorials are good.
Yeah, I like to be. It's not that I want the game to be instantly worthwhile. I just want it to reassure me in the first 20 minutes that there is something good coming, because there's lots of games that look superficially good now and aren't. And there's just lots of games. Like, I don't really need to have a hard time working out whether a game is good or not, because there's plenty that will announce how good they are pretty immediately, and I can just play those instead. So it's a matter of competition among the various media within my reach as much as anything. But how about the game length stuff? Do you feel like you have to complete a long game? Is that a problem for you, or are you able just to say enough is enough? And
I'm very happy to leave a thing when it's done for me. Like, it's weird to compare it to a book, but I feel as though I should finish a book to see where it's going. I've actually like put, thanks to doing a literature degree at university, I've learned to put books in the bin if they're not doing anything halfway through. And to be honest, games demand so much time. Like, even like a good action game like Doom Eternal, or that we've been discussing, or Don't Make Cry, or any action game, let alone a JRPG, like that's a lot of time to require you to learn skills. Like Sekiro is an incredible game, but it's 50 hours.
Yeah, that's a good example of a game that I really loved and I didn't finish, and I'm totally happy because I got exactly what I wanted from it, and I felt like I got my money's worth, and I was able to put it down. But I think this is new for me though, because I suspect, well, like you mentioned, this is a change for you with books, having done a literature degree. I mean, maybe you feel the same way as I do, having been a games journalist, where obviously there is some obligation on you to experience as much of a game as you're reviewing as possible.
Very true.
And like, it took me a long time to divorce myself from that, and feel like I wasn't doing a game justice if I didn't get as far through it as possible. Now I'm much more kind of able to
you see where it's going.
Exercise my discretion and just dump a game off once I feel like I've got enough of it.
I feel exactly the same way, because the games that I've felt most passionate about, I've completed on my own time, and not due to professional requirements. I like you, Marshall. I'm sure like I just finished every single game, but I got into this industry reviewing MMOs.
Oh God,
very bad. Well, just not bad, but just mediocre MMOs like Alloys Online and stuff like that no one else wants to take, and they can't be finished. And that sort of set a precedent. Really, it's like, if the shooting feels shit in the first 5 hours, it's not going to get better. Like the fundamental movement, aiming, gun feel, all of it, like, it should all be in place by a certain amount of time. Right. If it isn't there, then it's not going to suddenly materialize in the final third. And even if it does, no one should buy it because people's time is precious. Like you shouldn't have to put 20 hours into a game to unlock the goodness. It should be there. Like, sure, there should be onboarding, there should be tutorials that might take a few hours depending on the complexity of the game. But if you're 10 hours in and it's not fun, it's boring, and you don't see any sort of like trajectory, then yeah, ditch it, put it in the bin.
I do feel a certain regret though with particularly long games that I'm not going to see all the stuff that I'd quite like to see because it's just going to be innovatingly long. I like all the Assassin's Creed games suffer from this. I would really like to see parts of England in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but I know it's going to take too long to get there, and I've sort of run out of interest in the mechanics by the time,
Right.
but a third of the way through probably. Yeah. I wish games were issued with a highlights button, almost like an easy mode that just teleports. You say, "Okay, I'm sick of the game now. I don't mind wrecking the kind of continuity of the experience that the developers have planned. Just teleport me between the next few best bits that are gonna otherwise would take 60 hours. Just give me another good hour of the game. You already have my money. It's fine. I don't mind." But unfortunately, no such thing works. I got as far. I played as far in Assassin's Creed until I could check out their rendition of the Chislehurst Caves, which were a little underwhelming, and then I quit.
Yeah. So, games used to do this by giving you all your powers at the start of the game and then taking all your powers away. As a way of kind of like giving you a preview, perhaps, of your character's ultimate abilities that you might be able to exercise, which is flawed in numerous ways. First of all, you don't know how to use those powers because there's been no like onboarding or tutorial process for them, and also just being given all the stuff and then being rendered utterly useless is a terrible first half hour experience, isn't it? Really. And thankfully, that has kind of fallen by the wayside. I think Assassin's Creed Valhalla is an interesting example because the world kept me going, even though I prefer the combat system to the previous two of the reboots. But it sort of the game leans on it so much as the kind of the friction, the thing that you have to overcome in order to get the thing. By which I mean you'll get an objective marker across the valley, and the valley's beautifully modelled. It's gorgeous lighting. Every time of day just looks incredible. Nothing like Britain, of course, but you still just like go into the valley, come back out of it, climb up this huge cliff to get to this plateau that you've been hunting for, and then you have to fight a boar, and it's a 3-stage boss fight. And you could set it on fire and chop it apart and throw and shoot arrows into its neck and face and eyes. But when it hits the sort of like the first third, it will summon little boars to come and charge at you. So you have to murder them with fire. And then you do the same thing again to this boar that should surely be dead by now. And then like it'll sort of seem to croak, and it'll give a little cry. Then it'll summon more baby boars, twice as many. And suddenly you're surrounded and you're chopping them. And
I sense just a hint of weariness in your voice.
That's what I was going for. That is the precise emotion. It's like this is cool. I like the idea of being kind of like mythical animals in the wilds that you can defeat to grow your legend or whatever. But don't do this. Don't do this like very, very long 3-stage boss fight. It's like but the question asked, it's like, okay, I've got like an hour. Put the kids to bed. All the chores done, everything's done, the house is sorted. I've got an hour just to sit down. This game could fuck off in that context. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Right.
there are so many other games that you could just enjoy at a similar rhythm that will give you more of a sense of progression instead of this stupid fucking fight that adheres to very old-fashioned boss fight rules. Like, it's a 3-stage fight where the thing gets stronger and it has minions. And I don't know. I think the issue of games respecting time is going to become more and more important as critics get older.
Right.
Which is part of it. But again, if you want that really long form social experience, then MMOs are great at the moment. Like, Eve's still good. Final Fantasy 14 is amazing. World of Warcraft is still going, as millions of players. Like, if you want that kind of really long form experiential kind of thing, that's awesome. But I think modern RPGs need to look at Mass Effect and how snappy that was. Like, you could get like a short story done in an hour. Go to a planet, get a quest done, lots of some character development, a little bit of leveling up. Lovely. I mean, I'd love to see like the next equivalent of The Witcher or Cyberpunk pay attention to that loop, the speed of that loop, the cadence of that.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. Yeah, I never really thought about the structure of Mass Effect and its convenience, but you're exactly right. It was divided up into incredibly consumable chunks.
Even within, so the classic BioWare thing was to have an overly long intro sequence where the base blew up, and this applies to so many. This applies to like the original KOTOR and everything, and it's just a dungeon that teaches you how to RPG, and then it will give you a choice of, there'll be a bit of plot for about 20 minutes, and then it will give you a choice of like 3 places to go, and each of them will be their own self-contained little world, but within the world there'll be like 20-minute long, 30-minute long plot lines that you could sort of indulge in. It's sort of like pick and mix, basically. And then once you completed the overarching thing, pick another of the 3. It's a really good system. It's a really good way of structuring an RPG, I think.
Yeah, and it never felt like you were being railroaded into continuing either.
No.
I think there has been a recent trend. I think it's dying off, actually, of games trying to keep you engaged indefinitely by terminating one mission and opening a new thread that you just can't help but pick at, and then that obviously leads you into the next thing. But I think games have become kind of more aware of actual health issues with regards to inveigling players into playing for detrimental periods of time. Perhaps they're just worried about lawsuits, but it does seem that trend does seem to have disappeared a little bit. I hope it continues. I do like I like the finality of having completed a mission and knowing I can save and quit the game and come back to it later. That's good.
Yeah, I think also in the era of living games where games are always online often and sort of like measuring your progress in terms of time spent within the game, like you should this tends to be the case, but you should be able to Alt F4 and just quit and turn off the PC, and it should just keep everything you've done.
Oh yeah,
that should be a modern. Just, I mean, there's no excuse not to do it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm sure that it might be technically difficult in some contexts, but a good way of respecting people's time is that type of auto-saving, where if you have to suddenly get up and take a delivery or get up and do something, you should just be able to Alt F4, because almost everything in life is more important than the game you're playing.
We have a question from Moose Demeanor, and they say, "Dear Phasmids and Plasmids, episode 359 really struck a chord with me when the gang mentioned cutting pizza with scissors."
Hit me!
When I first started, you monster. When I first started dating my now wife, we made a pizza at home. Once the pizza was pulled from the oven, I began searching her drawers for a pizza slicer. She chuckled and pulled out a pair of normal scissors.
Correct.
Began cutting the pizza into slices like an uncultured swine. Who does that?
You found a good one. You found a good one.
Well, this is it. Fast forward 8 years, and it has become apparent that it was I who was the swine. Cutting pizza with normal scissors is the cat's pajamas and should be taught in schools. Now the question. I, like most, have an on and off relationship with Destiny 2. Cue Destiny 2 Inception womp noise.
Yeah.
A new expansion, I'm on for a month. A new season, 2 more weeks of nothing but Destiny, and a giant cold turkey sandwich. For this latest season, Bungie sent me their typical email informing me of all the new in-game activities and items. However, this email had a picture of a penguin statue, a real-life desk tchotchke. How do I obtain such majesty? It turns out Bungie has a program called Bungie Rewards where you can complete in-game achievements to earn real-life items. Only people who complete the in-game task can purchase the real-life item. I guess this isn't new, but it was new to me, and I quickly set out to unlock this penguin statue. I've now found all the penguins and have put in my order for the real-life statue. I am much more invested in Destiny 2 this season and feel more involved with the game overall. Have any of you participated in this rewards program or one like it? Do you think it is effective at engaging casual or hardcore players alike? Do you think video game themed physical items, such as collector's editions, extras, make players feel more connected to the virtual experience? Or are they more of a reward for players who are already heavily invested in an experience? Do you have a favourite video game themed physical token? Thanks! I've been listening since the PC Gamer UK podcast and love all the least/most nourishing banter. Shout out to Alex. I'm patiently waiting for my Mr. Hardware to arrive and love my 8-bit dough. 8-bit dough? 8-bit dough. I don't know. Arcade stick. V/R, comma, Mustamina.
Ah, that's a really nice message.
Yeah.
So I think I've been sullied on physical games tat by being like, this sounds awful. When I was like in the office of PC Game, I just been relentlessly sent it, and it all just went straight into the bin. And it was just literally stuff that we couldn't keep in the office. And like, the reason is like that, PR send magazines stuff or publications stuff in the hope that you will sort of like photograph and tweet it out and create extra marketing for them on their behalf, which is why it goes in the bin, because that's not your job. You're supposed to be separate from that. You're supposed to be, reporting and reviewing, slightly outside of the industry. And having said that, nothing that came across my desk I ever wanted to keep at all.
No, right.
You know what I mean? Like, even, irrespective of, whatever ethics or whatever involved in reporting on the thing, it was all shite. I don't know. Well, do you have this experience as well, Marsh?
Oh, I hate tat. I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm very, very anti-tat. Although having moved countries several times does make you quite averse to physical items in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I even before then, I never really liked statues or I don't know, coasters with games on them or T-shirts or mouse mats, etc. I can't imagine wanting one. I don't know what kind of physical token, video game themed physical token, would you find irresistible though? Can you imagine such a thing?
I think, yeah. So what's describing the question gets close in that I had an amazing time with Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 up to a point. I've not played it for months and months, and I'm off that crack now. And I'm not allowed to look at it in case it comes back again. But there was a kind of like end of era completion festival, basically. And if you completed all of the triumphs, which are basically just quests to do all of the raids, do all of the dungeons, get all of the weapons from that particular season, then you were allowed the opportunity to buy a hoodie. And the part where I went no was immediately at the very start of that journey. Where it's like, so you want me to work for 12 hours, perhaps, so I can spend £20 plus postage from America for a hoodie? So yeah, no, it's literally every stage of that progression. I was like, no.
Yeah, and to say the various game branded Fruit of the Loom T-shirts that I've accepted over the years have been entirely for pajamas, pajama wear, or gardening or painting. They
Likewise.
They don't go out in public.
Yeah. Actually, I don't mean to be mean about people who actually like. So people actually really get into it, and it is kind of micro pride. And if you're hanging out with like people who are into the same kind of or into Destiny, for example, or World of Warcraft or anything like that, and you go to BlizzCon, or you go to Bungie's events, then that's really cool. Actually, I think fandom can be awesome. But I really particularly resent having to grind to play a game in order to have the opportunity to buy a product. And I can't get over that. I don't know, I just can't get over that.
Yeah.
Don't at me.
It does sound like it's asking quite a lot.
I think so. I felt like I gave a really negative answer to that. Really nice question.
You should cherish and enjoy the things if they give you pleasure. Does it spark joy? And then if it does, it's good. Those are all the questions that we have. If you'd like to send us a question, you can do so at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can tweet us at crateandcrowbar. You can find this recording and others uploaded as videos to YouTube, and there's other nonsense by us there. You can back us on Patreon if you like. That is patreon.com/crateandcrowbar, or you can just join our Discord community. They're very, very nice people. You can find the link for that on our website, which is crateandcrowbar.com. That's it. I've been Marsh Davis.
I've been Tom Senior. I'd like to give a quick shout out to our Role Models community, which is split off from the main Crate and Crowbar Discord community, but it'll be dead easy for you to find if you search for it on Google.
Thanks for listening, everybody.